I wasn't supposed to take the Friday shift. It landed in the group chat like a dropped plate. Urgent. Anyone covers 7 to 1. 2 kids, easy money, decent Wi-Fi. I stared at the address pen. A quiet suburban crescent near the edge of town, where the houses wear their porches like smiles. Rent was due. My car needed brakes. Good decisions don't always start as good. I typed, "I can," before my better judgment woke up. I got there at 6:53, 5 minutes early because I'm the kind of person who apologizes to empty rooms. The street was the kind of peaceful that makes you check the sky. A kid's bike lay on a lawn like it had decided to nap mid-ride. The parents met me at the door in that two-person panic dance people do when they're late. Mr. Taylor had a suit jacket folded over his arm. Mrs. Taylor's lipstick looked like it had been applied while walking. 2 daughters, Mia, 8, and Lucy, 4, peered from behind knees like understudies waiting for their cue. Bedtimes are on the fridge, snacks in the bottom drawer, no nuts. She lowered her voice. Lucy's afraid of the basement. Honestly, I am too. Don't worry about laundry tonight. She smiled quick like a Band-Aid. Mr. Taylor handed me a set of keys with a house key, a garage fob, and a silver tag that looked like it belonged to a locker. Back by 1. Text if you need us. Reception's awful in the club. And then they were gone, their cars sliding into the polite darkness of the crescent. The house exhaled. We made pizza into triangles that pretended to be dinner. Mia showed me a gymnastics routine between couch and coffee table. I flinched. She didn't. Lucy put stuffed animals in a row and asked if they could watch a cartoon if they promised to be good. I said yes, because sometimes the only peace in the world is a talking raccoon with a moral. At 8:15, I did the bedtime circuit. Bathroom, teeth, books. Mia wanted a mystery about a kid detective. Lucy wanted nothing but a nightlight. Their rooms faced the backyard. The curtains were pink with white stars somebody had ironed dignity into. The nightlight was a rabbit with a soft glow. The monitor on the dresser blinked a tiny green dot at me like a patient heartbeat. Downstairs, I washed dishes that didn't need washing because busy hands keep quiet thoughts quiet. My phone buzzed. "You good?" from Mrs. Taylor. I sent a thumbs up and a photo of the rabbit nightlight glow like proof of life. The first call came at 9:02. The landline on the kitchen wall rang. Actual bell sound, old-fashioned, like a doorbell that had learned to speak. I glanced at the caller ID, basement. It shouldn't have said that. The house phone labeled rooms? I lifted the receiver because apparently I'm still the kind of person who picks up phones in 2025. Static. Then a breath. Not a wrong number breath, a house breath, patient and near. "Hello?" I said. The static brightened, then dropped. The line went dead. I told myself some landlines display extensions. I told myself a lot of things. I went to check the girls. Mia sprawled starfish across her bed like the ocean was a person. Lucy slept in a curl, thumb resting near mouth but not inside, practicing not needing it. I turned to go and heard it. 3 slow knocks from somewhere below the floor. "Old pipes," I said out loud like a spell. At 9:18, the landline rang again. Caller ID, basement. I let it ring twice, picked up on the third the way I'd seen in movies. Static, breath, then a voice, a child's whisper, said, "Don't answer her." I froze. "Who is this?" The voice didn't repeat. The line filled with refrigerator hum and then clicked off. I walked to the basement door because sometimes sanity requires the field trip. The door was off the kitchen, 4 steps from the fridge, with a deadbolt above the knob and one of those swinging door stops like a little brass kneeling man. I turned the knob. The deadbolt held. I listened. Houses have a basement sound, a bowl of night kind of empty. This one had another sound underneath it, a hush that wasn't silence, like a mouth held near an ear. I stepped back, locked the deadbolt tighter, because that's how fear negotiates with wood. I texted Mrs. Taylor, "Hey, quick thing, your landline says basement when it rings. All good here, just weird." The typing bubble bobbed, disappeared, reappeared. "That phone is unplugged downstairs. Don't worry, reception bad. See you at 1. No punctuation. My skin learned a new sweat. "Unplugged," I said to the cabinet, which did not offer a rebuttal. At 9:41, the baby monitor whispered the soft gasp kids make when they roll over. Then it transmitted something else, a voice, very close to the mic, a woman's whisper, "Lucy." Not a mom voice, a voice you use with a name when you wanted to look at you. I sprinted up the stairs I had promised to take slowly. Mia, asleep. Lucy, asleep. Except the rabbit nightlight had been turned to face the wall. I hadn't done that. I turned it back. The room regained its heartbeat. Back in the hall, the air felt colder near the attic pull cord. "No," I told the house gently like a dog who wants to go out at midnight, "we're not opening that." At 10:03, the landline rang a third time. Caller ID, basement. I picked up and said nothing. The static hummed. Then, in a child's sing-song, "Mia, Lucy, come and see." It sounded like a rhyme kids chant on a playground. I hung up, because if the phone becomes a mouth, you can close it. I texted again, "Hey, think your basement line is crossed. Could someone be messing with it?" No reply. I added, "No emergency, just keep me posted if late." The read receipt never arrived. At 10:17, the kitchen lights flickered, once, twice. The fridge motor hiccuped. The house shifted its weight on its foundation like it had remembered a different song. I opened the freezer and took 3 ice cubes like communion, because staying put is a religious act when your feet want to run. The basement door inhaled. That's the best way to say it. The gap at the floor breathed cold air into the room, a little exhale that smelled like wet cement. The doorbell rang. I checked the porch camera on the tablet by the door. The chime rang again, a second time with that polite urgency people use when they know you're in there. I opened the door with the chain still on. No one. The street had gone into that after 10 quiet where even dogs feel judged. I went back inside and locked everything like I was in a tutorial. At 10:32, the monitor whispered again, "Lucy." This time it sounded like the word had learned to smile, then whispering I couldn't parse, like a longer sentence tucked into a hallway.
I ran upstairs. Lucy wasn't in her bed. The covers had learned an empty shape. The nightlight pointed at the ceiling. Mia's room was open. "Lucy?" No answer. I found her in the hall, sitting at the top of the stairs, staring down into the dark. "Honey," I said, kneeling, "did you get scared?" She didn't look at me. "She's calling," Lucy said, "from the bottom." I picked her up. Her pajamas held the cold the way coins hold fingerprints. We sat on the couch with a cartoon, the way you fold the blanket over a bad idea. I texted, "Call me," to Mrs. Taylor, and then called anyway. Straight to voicemail. I left one that started casual and ended with my voice telling the truth. While I spoke, the landline rang again. I picked up with Lucy in my lap. "Stop," I said. "It's not brilliant, but it's English." The static brightened, and a voice that might have been a child's or might have been a woman who had forgotten how said, "Don't answer her." "Who?" I asked. "The other mommy," it said, delighted like a kid learning a new bad word. I hung up so hard the handset twicked resentment. At 11:04, footsteps moved under the kitchen. Not the polite pipes settle, not the furnaces exhale. Footsteps, heel to toe, unhurried, like Sunday walking. The basement door breathed again. Lucy whispered, "She said we can go down if we're careful." I said, "We're going to do the opposite." Mia appeared on the stairs like a ghost in athletic socks. "What's that sound?" "Your house being weird," I said. "Back to bed." She didn't move. "Mom says don't go in the basement," she said. "Mom says that a lot," I agreed. The doorbell rang again. The porch camera showed the rental sedan empty and idling. A person-shaped shadow moved in the far right corner of the frame where the motion sensor doesn't quite reach. I watched for 30 seconds, the way you watch pot lids, hoping water won't boil. Nothing. I was suddenly aware the landline cord was long enough to reach the basement door. At 11:17, I made a plan. Turn on every light upstairs, sit in the hall between the girls' rooms, and be the bouncer for sleep. I carried Lucy back to bed and tucked her so tight she made a noise. Mia went willingly, because bravery is easier in pairs. I planted myself on the hallway rug with my back against the linen closet door. It worked for 9 minutes. The upstairs hall light clicked off by itself. The rabbit nightlight in Lucy's room dimmed to a smear. A voice on the monitor sang, soft and almost kind, "Mia, Lucy, come and see." I stood, knocked my elbow against the closet, and the entire house went dark, as if a breath had been held and not returned. From below, the basement door latch lifted. I heard it. Latches have a sound like teeth being thoughtful. Footsteps on the basement stairs began, slow, careful, as if not to wake someone. The power came back. The hall light stuttered into being. I ran to the top of the stairs and yelled, "Who's there?" Because language is a reflex. The footsteps stopped halfway. The landline rang. Caller ID, basement. I picked up without taking my eyes off the darkness below. "Don't answer her," the voice said again. A different voice spoke under it, a woman's, chest deep and near. "Mia." The sound of my name said by a stranger would have been kinder. I slammed the basement door and threw the deadbolt. I dragged a chair in front of it because theater helps. The chair vibrated slightly, as if pushed from the other side, then settled like a decision. We moved the vigil to the girls' rooms, one beanbag in each doorway, me a hinge. Every squeak became a code. Every shadow looked like a person who hadn't auditioned properly. At 11:46, the porch camera pinged. Motion. The rental's driver door stood open now. Someone, no one, was getting in. Then the car backed away without a driver. I'd been on the road for 9 hours, following a line of interstate that promised cheap gas, cheaper coffee, and nothing worth a postcard. By the time the rain started, my windshield wipers were tired of me. I passed 3 motels before picking one, the kind with a flickering neon sign that just said motel, like it had given up on adjectives. The lobby was a glass box with a bored clerk scrolling on his phone. His name tag read Ray. He slid a ledger toward me instead of a computer. I wrote my name like it was a password. Full up except one. Room's on the 2nd floor. End of the hall. Can't miss it. The key was real metal with a fat plastic tag. No number. Just a scratched surface where digits had been sanded off. I almost asked, but rain makes people less curious. I climbed the concrete stairs and walked to the balcony toward the far end. Each door had a gold number screwed in at eye level, 201, 202, 203, until the last, a door with no number, just 4 screw holes where something used to be. The lock turned easy, like the door was waiting for me. Inside, standard motel script, queen bed, floral comforter, TV bolted to a dresser, a lamp with a tilted shade. But the carpet was darker near the bed, a patch that had been scrubbed and given up. I showered, ate a granola bar, and tried to watch TV. The channels looped news, game shows, then static. On Channel 8, static froze into a single black and white frame, the room I was sitting in, empty, the angle from the ceiling corner. I changed channels fast, but when I flicked back, the frame was gone. Sleep came slow. The AC rattled like loose teeth. At 2:14 a.m., the phone rang. I let it go 3 rings, picked up. Static. Then a voice, a man's, low, deliberate. "That's not your room." I said nothing. The line clicked dead. I checked the hall. Empty. All the other doors slept behind gold numbers. My door, plain and nameless, stood open a crack even though I'd locked it. I shut it, slid the bolt, shoved the desk chair under the knob because rituals help. Back in bed, I heard footsteps in the hall, slow, heavy, dragging a little. They stopped outside my door. No knock, just waiting. The shadow of feet showed under the gap, then gone. At 3:07 a.m., the TV turned itself on. Not static this time. An old videotape quality picture. A man sitting on the same bed I was in, head bowed, hands in his lap. Then he looked up at the camera. His face was pale, his mouth too wide in a smile that wasn't kind. The screen went black. I pulled the plug. The TV stayed on for 3 more seconds before dying. I didn't sleep. At dawn, I packed, key in hand, and went to check out. Ray looked up from his phone. "Sleep all right?" "The room was weird," I said. He frowned. "You weren't in 207. "No, the one at the end." I showed him the key. He stared like I'd handed him a dead bird. "We don't rent that room. Been closed since '95. A guy did something. They bricked it off inside." I almost laughed. "I was in it last night." He shook his head slow. "No, you weren't." He slid a receipt across the counter. The room number read 207. When I looked back at the key, the tag had numbers again. 207, scratched but legible. I left it on the counter and walked into the morning rain that felt cleaner than it should. On the balcony above, the door at the end was gone, just blank siding, no frame, no knob, no way in. When I signed the lease on the little craftsman on Sycamore Street, the landlord pointed at the shared driveway and said, "You'll like the neighbors, quiet." It was August hot, and the house smelled like old wood that had forgiven a lot. The basement door in my place stuck in the frame like it had decided to retire. Across the driveway stood a twin of my house, but darker somehow, as if somebody had turned the saturation down. The mailbox read B. Collins in ghosted vinyl letters. I met him once, thin, polite, a man who shaved carefully. He said his name was Ben, then immediately apologized for the mowing schedule, like people do when they live too close to strangers. Inside, I unpacked in the polite order of survival: bed, kettle, Wi-Fi. The basement could wait. The first night I learned how sound works on this block. The crickets tuned the street, the freeway hummed its faraway ocean, and around 11 came a slow, steady knocking that I counted to convince myself it was plumbing. 3 knocks, pause, 2 knocks, pause, 3 again. Not frantic, practice. It seemed to come from under the kitchen and from the other side of the shared concrete wall, my basement, his basement, the seam between. Old pipes, I told the sink. The sink did not disagree. Saturday, I met Ben in the driveway. He carried a laundry basket and wore a collared shirt to do it, the way people do who learned habits in a stricter house. We did the neighborly script about trash day and the best tacos. "Your basement door sticks?" he asked, unprompted. "Mine does too." He smiled like we'd shared a joke. That afternoon, I tackled the basement. The door shuddered open after a shoulder and a soft curse. Stale, cool air exhaled. The stairs were narrow, the bulb a dangling 60-watt apology. The space was standard issue: furnace, water heater, shelves holding the archaeology of previous tenants. Against the shared wall, a waist-high rectangle of painted-over plywood with 12 screws set too carefully to be casual. A soundproofing job, maybe, or a plug in a wound. I turned off the light and listened. On the other side of the panel, in Ben's basement, something moved the way an empty coat hanger taps a rod after you take the coat off. That night the knock returned. 3, pause, 2, pause, 3. A rhythm so sure it felt like it belonged to the house more than to a person. I texted a friend. "Plumbing question? Do old pipes knock Morse?" She replied, a skull emoji, and move. I laughed and put a towel along the basement door for drafts, like an adult who knows rituals. At 1:04 a.m., my phone buzzed with a number I didn't know. I ignored it. The voicemail transcription read, "Hi, it's Ben. Sorry to bother. Do you hear them too?" Then a second line, "Don't answer if she's listening." The timestamp was 12:08 p.m., 8 hours earlier. The message had arrived late, like it had walked. Sunday, I knocked on Ben's door. No answer. The blinds inside were the kind that always look closed, even when they're open. I left a post-it that said, "Call me," and a smiley that I meant as non-threatening. The note was gone by evening. He never called. The week grew its habits. At 10:37 p.m., the knock. At 11:20, a hum from the wall, like someone singing without opening their mouth. Sometimes, beneath the hum, a long, patient drag, as if something heavy moved across cement. I told myself Ben had a dehumidifier on a timer. I told myself anything I would believe. On Thursday, the fuse blew while I was in the shower. The house went church quiet. I wrapped in a towel and went down to the basement with my flashlight, toes protesting concrete. The fuse box sat on the shared wall, above the screwed-off panel. I flipped the breaker, the bulb flickered back to life, and a breath of air came through the seam around the panel, cold and damp, with the smell of pennies. Someone spoke, very close on the other side, a woman's voice, like a radio not tuned perfectly. "Ben?" It wasn't a question about the fact of him. It was a question about where to put him. I did not answer. I stood very still, letting the basement decide what I was. She spoke again, nearer. "Ben, open!" The last word sounded taut, like a dog who had learned it got what it wanted when it used the right syllables. I moved backward up the stairs without deciding to. I shut the basement door and slid the deadbolt I'd installed that afternoon for reasons I'd pretended were about raccoons. At midnight, a text arrived from an unknown number. "Don't say her name. Count." Then, "If she knocks, knock back 2 only." The number wasn't Ben's from the voicemail. It was off by 1 digit. I wrote, "Who is this?" and hit send. The message failed. I tried again. Message not delivered. Friday after work, I saw Ben at his mailbox. He looked thinner, as if the house had been drinking his shadow. We stood 8 feet apart like polite strangers on a winter sidewalk. "You're leaving town?" I asked, because a battered suitcase sat by his stoop. He shook his head no, and yes at once. "She gets louder when the moon is wrong." Then, as if embarrassed at having said something true, he added, "Want tomatoes? I've got extras." He handed me a brown bag. Inside, 3 tomatoes and a small brass bell on a string. "What's this for?" I asked. "So you remember when she stops," he said. That night the knock came earlier. 3, pause, 2, pause, 3. Then from the panel, a whisper, "Benjamin." It bent the syllables the way a person bends wire with pliers, careful and wrong. I took the bell from the paper bag and held it, stupid talisman in a stupid basement in a stupid world. The whispering stopped the way a cat stops when you look at it. Then a new sound, nails trailing lightly along wood grain. The bell moved in my hand, not by force, but by suggestion, like a word finding the right mouth. "Count," I told myself, the way you tell a child to breathe. I knocked twice on the panel. The nail stopped. After a slow beat, 2 knocks came back, delicate, delighted. I went upstairs and turned on every light, like a bad plan. In the kitchen, the tomatoes sat where I had left them, red as throats. The brass bell lay beside them. It rang once, very softly, though I hadn't touched it. Saturday morning, a city truck blocked the street while a crew cut a slice from the sycamore. Ben stood on his porch, watching men in hard hats argue with physics. "The tree's sick," he said to no one. "Roots get into the old drains." He said it like a confession.
After lunch, I knocked on his door again. This time he opened. His house looked like mine, but with its eyebrows lowered. Same floor plan, darker paint, different kind of careful. A runner rug led straight back to his basement door. A chain hung across it like a necklace on a throat you don't want to touch. He saw me look and said, "I rent the upstairs. I don't go down there." "Who does?" I asked. "She does," he said, and then smiled politely as if he'd made a joke at a bad time. He offered coffee. I said yes, because saying no felt like taking a hand off the wheel. We sat at his table and didn't drink the coffee. "She learned my name from the ducts," he said, "from the builder's pencil marks. When I don't answer, she practices with the wall. When I moved in, I thought it was animals. It's not animals." "What does she want?" I asked. He considered, then said, "Company," as if quoting a diagnosis you don't fight because the cure costs more. "Has she ever—" "Opened?" he said. "Once." He gestured at the chain. I was careful after. "And the panel?" he asked. "Previous owner. Said soundproofing. Said laundry room makeover. Said a lot of things that turned out not to be lies exactly." The brass bell on his windowsill rang then, a single bright punctuation. Ben flinched. We looked at each other with the expression people wear when a plan they don't have is starting without them. That night, the pattern changed. She knocked 2 first. 2, pause, 3, pause, 2. Like she'd been corrected and wanted extra credit. It made the hair on my arms think about leaving. I stood in my basement and did not knock back. She whispered "Ben" then, softly, like someone teaching a pet word. My name. It sounded almost right. "Don't," I said, stupidly, to wood. She laughed once, high and short, and in the laugh I heard a pipe breathe and water hesitate and the small patience of concrete. At 2:02 a.m., the house lost power again. The dark was a thing with ideas. My phone's flashlight carved a small tunnel in it. The breaker felt warmer than it should. On the panel, a narrow line had appeared in the paint, from top screw to bottom, hairline but confident. Not a crack, a seam deciding what it wanted to be. I went upstairs and sat on the bottom steps because stairs are the middle of everything. The bell rang once in the kitchen. Then the knock came from the other side of my basement door. Not the panel. 3, pause, 2, pause, 3. Like she had found the geometry. I texted Ben, "You up?" No read. I called, Voicemail. I went to his porch in pajamas and bare feet, like a person who has lost the thread. His lights were off, but his TV glowed faintly. I knocked, too, softly. The chain on his basement door rattled in answer. The front door opened a hand's width. Ben stood there, gray and unshaven, his shirt misbuttoned, like a man who tried to fix a problem in the dark and lost twice. "He don't talk in the hall," he whispered. "The vents carry it." He let me in and shut the door gently, like quiet is a wall. I said, "She's in both. She's learning." He nodded, then surprised me by laughing, not happy, not bitter, something like recognition. She was here before the walls. We built around her. He went to his sink and took a small jar from a high cupboard, coarse salt. He handed it to me like medicine. "Sills and thresholds, names under your breath." "I thought that was for ghosts," I said. "Maybe she is. Maybe we are. Does it matter?" He looked older than his face. We laid a thin line of salt along his back door and said our names the way you do at a doctor's office when you want to be sure you're the right patient. The house listened with the patience of a judge. At 3:11 a.m., we heard the seam in my panel widen. You can hear paint detach from paint when the air is wrong. I went back to my place with the bell and the jar. "If she knocks," he said at my door, "knock 2, never 3. Don't say thank you. She thinks that's permission." I waited in my basement, because running up and down stairs is not a plan. The seam became a thin shadow. A small draught carried a smell like cold laundry and old iron. She knocked 2. I knocked 2 back. Silence, then a slow drag along the seam like a fingernail testing a scab. The bell rang once and then was quiet for a long time. When the breaker clicked, the lights returned and pretended they had never left. In the morning, my panel had not opened, but every screw had turned a fraction, the way screws do when a house learns a new weather. I turned them back with a driver until my hand hurt. I laid salt on the sill and swept none of it away with my sleeve. I said my name, then Ben's, because the vents don't know which house is which. The bell gave no opinion. 2 days later, a for sale sign appeared in Ben's yard like a diagnosis stuck in the grass. He didn't answer the door. A moving truck came at dusk and left at midnight with less than it should have. The next morning, his blinds were open for the first time, showing a living room staged like a polite lie. No chain across the basement door, no bell, no jar in the cupboard. The house looked relieved and wrong. That night, the knock didn't come. Silence arrived and sat heavy, like a guest afraid of breaking a chair. I slept. At 4:12 a.m., my phone vibrated with a voicemail received from a number I didn't know. The transcription read, "Count, 2 only, don't open." Then, "She doesn't like empty." The timestamp said it was recorded last winter. The house learned a new habit in the weeks after. Daytime scratching behind the panel like mice with better handwriting. A cold patch at the foot of the basement stairs that you could step around if you remembered. The bell rolling an inch by itself when heavy trucks passed 2 streets over. I did the salt, I did the names, I did not answer when she said mine right. Ben's house sold to a couple who smiled like realtors. They painted everything white that wasn't already. On moving day, I brought cookies and didn't say the words basement or night. At 10:37 p.m., I stood in my kitchen with the bell and waited. The knock came through the shared wall. 3, pause, 2, pause, 3. Then stopped, then started again from lower down. 2, pause, 2, as if calibrating. I knocked 2 back, because that is the shape of my religion now. Sometimes I hear steps on the other side of the panel, slow and careful, the way people walk when they don't want dust to judge them. Sometimes I hear humming that nearly remembers a tune. Sometimes the bell rings once at noon, as if she tastes the light and makes a note. The new neighbors laugh in the yard. Their toddler's voice carries down the drive like a bottled boat in good weather. I keep salt in a clear jar on the shelf, like sugar. I keep a driver by the stairs. I say my name out loud when the house is empty, not to convince the house, but to remind myself. If you move to Sycamore Street and your basement has a panel with too many screws, do the obvious first. Check for leaks, oil the hinges, learn the fuse box, then listen at the seam. If you hear 3, 2, 3, don't knock 3 back. Knock 2, wait, count. Names are doors, keys are keys, basements are time. If she learns your name, do not teach her the way you say thank you. Save that for people who knock upstairs. If you ask me who she is, I'll tell you what Ben told me. Maybe she was here before the walls. Maybe she's the part of the house that doesn't like empty. Maybe she's just what you get when loneliness has a basement and a good ear. Whatever she is, she counts. So must you.